Hi, everyone, and welcome to the World of Work podcast. This podcast is a topic spotlight series and brought to you by Autism Valued Incorporated, previously known as Asperger's Victoria, and in relation to our World of Work initiatives. My name is Ballard, and I lead all things employment related for the AV community, and I do this work with lived experience as my backbone. With my own diagnosis of autism, ADHD, and Tourette syndrome. We are a small non-profit doing big work, and this podcast is simply a means of trying to let more people know who we are and what we do. I hope you enjoy what we have to say. Let's get into it. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the World of Work podcast. Joining me today, two colleagues and friends of AV. Jack and Sarah. Jack is AV's admin manager, oversees most of the community interactions and the peer support groups and so forth. And Sarah is coming on and joining us as the job seeker facilitator. So really glad to have them both in here today to hear a little bit from them. So without further ado, starting ladies first, Sarah, would you just like to give a little bit of a rundown as to yourself and what gets you interested in this work and why why you're here today, sharing your voice?
I've been, I have a lived experience of being autistic as well, but also I've been running a business, helping people on the spectrum, mostly looking for work through the NDIS mostly. And yeah, so I guess I just reached out to Jacob one day and we started talking and we had a lot of similar goals, and basically that's why I wanted to get involved, because I'm quite passionate about closing the gap with the autistic unemployment rate, and yeah, that's kind of my sole focus.
We were joking about before this started. We were saying that you kind of came to me with somewhat of a complaint in a sense.
I did.
But then I was like, I really like the way you're thinking that through or whatever. I'm like, I'm all for changing that. Come join me, sort of thing. And
And I was like, okay.
yeah, probably
Didn't expect that response.
Yeah, most people are pretty bad at taking feedback, but I'm like, I like it. Someone to challenge me. Come join me.
Yeah.
So yeah, really glad that you're here joining us. And Jack, would you like to just let everyone know a little bit about what you do for us?
Fantastic. So I'm the community administration manager at AV. I'm the primary contact for the organization, and I'm responsible for managing our interest groups, and I support somewhat in managing our peer support groups. I guess I'm kind of here to talk a bit about my experience being a job seeker, which is a couple of years ago now, but still.
Yeah, the lived experience is what these conversations are all about. So, um, yeah, as the listeners might know now, I come to these with a couple of questions and offer listeners to, our guests to also come with a couple of questions and comments within itself. So, I'll ask this question and then maybe we stick with that same cycle. I'll let Sarah answer first and then Jack can tackle.
Yep,
If Sarah
that's
feels
fine.
like she's, needs a little minute, you can put your hand up and then maybe Jack can, tap in. Okay, my first question to the both of you is, what are the biggest mistakes the system makes with neurodivergent job seekers, and why do those mistakes keep happening, do you feel?
I think that the biggest mistake, in my view, is seeking short-term solutions instead of looking at more sustainable options. And I think that a lot of autistic people go through cycles of burnout and job instability, which is extremely common with a lot of people these days because the world of work has changed. And a lot of, unfortunately, job seeking programs are still sort of catching up with that reality, in that most people are going to go through a lot of careers in their lives, like probably around, not careers, like your career is all of your jobs that you've had technically. And so, but you might have more than 12 jobs in your lifetime. And some of those transitions are going to be difficult. And for autistic people who struggle with transitions, particularly, that increases like the consequences, I think, in terms of like unemployment, which is why I think, yeah, autistic people can cycle through a lot of different jobs. The other thing is, I think this keeps happening because politicians prioritize short-term gains, depending on the current economic climate. Things are changing, but I think there's still a lot more work to be done. So I just think that I just really wanted to just also touch on the factors as well, that are other factors in addition to this are our culture as well. Workplace systems designs aren't really inclusive for autistic people. Recruitment practices, overemphasis on cultural fit, ableism, and other a lack. There used to be a lack of early intervention and job flexibility, and I think that is why we're seeing worse outcomes with some older autistic adults. Whereas hopefully, with the up and coming generation, things might shift a little bit.
Fingers crossed.
I only hope so. Yeah. I think it might be. I remember late towards the end of my high school, they were talking about how, yep, you'll probably have an average of 7 jobs over the course of your career. I mean,
Yes.
7 different careers over the course of your working life. I think it's maybe less like specific problems and kind of like the whole system, or at least the pillars that it's built on. I think about like what I think is like kind of the base of the pyramid, which is like applying for jobs and job interviews, and the workload can sometimes seem absolutely insane. I remember when I was applying for jobs, you'd like create your cover letter, you'd make your resumes, and you'd update it to be relevant to that job. And then half the time, especially for jobs before I gained any kind of qualification, you would then repeatedly answer the things you'd already answered in both those documents. And you'd do it over and over again because you need to apply for job after job after job.
Yeah. And you're like, did
Realistically,
you
I don't
even
know
read
if you
this?
know how many on average people would need to apply for.
In my experience, if you're doing good applications, it's like 1 interview per 10 jobs. But some people who, this is for everyone too, by the way, not just autistic people. But for people who don't or take shortcuts in their job application processes, they could go through 100 job applications before they get an interview. But I've found I can probably get some, I think it's like 1 in 10 applications. Yeah, around about that. That's just my personal estimate.
Yeah. I think it was that about for me too. And then like I think you said like cultural fit.
Yes.
I remember like job interviews themselves having to essentially give off the right vibe or just say the perfect sentence that they're secretly looking for. It did get a bit easier for me after I got some kind of a qualification. So I have a qualification in allied health assistance. I could essentially just refer to the placement I did at a hospital and my competencies in that, and then recall specific facts about how to do the job. And that did make the process easier. But to answer your question, I think it's kind of the base of the pyramid. Does that make sense?
Another point I just wanted to highlight there, when we're talking about applications and just creating our resumes and cover letters, is that a lot of people aren't aware that at least many of the larger employers, they have what's called an ATS system in place, which is basically an automatic tracking system where it's filtering. So HR people aren't going through hundreds of resumes anymore. There's essentially a software that will, based on your core needs and the role and everything, it'll pretty much take those 100, 200 and put the best 10 in front of them. Then it might have, the next 20. It's kind of they don't want to be sitting there doing all of that work. And there's a factor of that makes it less interpersonal, but also if your resume does get into those positions, it's kind of a good sign to realize that you've made it through
Yeah,
through the
so
rough.
that's why it's really important to put certain keywords into that's what I help people with actually do with my clients, because like of my HR background, I can kind of reverse engineer that whole process because I did recruitment. But in saying that, you still don't normally go straight to an interview, even though the resume gets through. So they might, there's other hurdles now, like the psychometric testing, their phone interview, other testing, depending on the, like, actually it's even just right down to entry level roles now. It's kind of, which is part of the problem as well, I think. Yeah, so I still, but yeah, it's true. Like it is important to properly put those keywords into your resume and really read the selection criteria carefully, because that will give you clues as to what should be on what the system's going to pick up. Yeah.
And this might be a controversial take to some, especially the older school job coaches. But if you know you're being met with a computer, use if you know AI is filtering it out, use AI to kind of tackle AI. Don't trust in AI if you've got someone to counter that, someone like Sarah or like myself, or even someone who's done an application before. But that takes a lot of the repetitive recrafting it, redoing it, and yes, moving away from something like ChatGPT, which everyone would know. There are some cool sites. One of them I introduced into last year's Job Seeker Network and tried to get people to, and the Young Adults pilot that we did. It's called Teal HQ, and it kind of does a lot of that in-house. So for job seekers, it can track the jobs that you've applied for. It can, with the sort of built-in AI system that helps you craft your resume. You can kind of link it in with like your job seeking site like Seek or LinkedIn. So definitely recommend people checking that one out. But again, these are just tools. Don't let them be, use them as tools.
I don't think it's, we use AI a lot, don't we?
Yeah, I'm all for, I mean,
we are like the fast adopters.
Yeah.
They should put autism valued at the top of the AI readiness.
well, I mean, another reason why it's important to me in that sense is because I know a lot of the job seekers and a lot of the youth now, they're using AI
Yep.
as like their Google search. So I'm focused on that of like, well, how do we make sure the information going into those AIs are actually,
Yeah.
reflective and stuff. But for my sense is, you use it for like templating things and for bringing things together. But it's never the final. There's always peer review. There's always multiple reflections because everything I do, we're working with others.
So does this Teal HQ, does that do cover letters as well?
I do believe so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to, well, I think that's fair enough if people can use that and it does a good enough job.
Yeah, well, it's a really handy tool. However, I do think it's American based at the moment. But
Okay.
in saying that, you can still kind of use it as a
Yeah.
I guess because it's all online, it shouldn't matter too much.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to have these skills and understand the why anyway, just so they can actually check the AI's done it correctly. Otherwise, they won't actually know why.
Yeah.
And whether, the AI will just spit something out and it might be incorrect.
Yeah. So it really comes down to what you're prompting it with. You've got to put in correct information and good information for it to build off. If you just kind of like build me a CV, blah, 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 blah. It's not really going to be that good. But
you maybe want to go like, these are the requirements of the role. These are my skills. Can you tell me how my skills align, and write paragraphs on how my skills align?
Yeah, and you can create projects in a lot of those things where you can put in examples of the templates. You want examples of the resumes that you think, are suited. So you can just Google. If you don't know what that looks like, you can Google it. If you've got your own, put your draft in. So it's what you give it is what you're going to get out of it a lot of the time. But ChatGPT, for example, actually has a resume building tool that you can add in directly into that someone's created. So that's its core job. It will act like an agent, like a professional resume writer. So, don't shy away from these tools, I suppose, is
Don't go old school.
yeah.
Well, look, if it makes my life easier, I'm all for it, because when I'm working with clients, a lot of that's actually case management. And so there's a lot of different balls moving in the air. So if I can take the load off with something like that, that's one less thing that I have to think about.
Yeah.
and I can just go over it to make sure that it's being done correctly.
Yeah, and for me, building these sort of things or doing stuff like launching a podcast,
Yep.
not only do I have to sit here and talk in the podcast, I have to learn about how to run a podcast and how to deliver a podcast and how to, so if I didn't have, uh, if I didn't have a super intelligence to, reflect some of my ideas back to me and pick that apart and, that, then I got some super intelligent people around me too, but we're all so busy. Yeah. So again, let's, yeah, don't be scared of using the tools that are out there. They're being built for a reason. My second question for you both is, how can we help an autistic person discover what kind of work they might actually thrive in when the standard career advice doesn't account for them?
What can be really helpful and what can be really important in this is essentially finding community. Because when we connect to people, we not only discover other people, but we discover more about ourselves. They expose us to more ideas. They expose us to kind of different areas of ourselves. I think I found out about AV through people that I knew. I found out about like what I kind of found important. It can help you find your motivators. Like, is your top priority making more money? Is your top priority making an impact? Is it helping people? Do you just want to have fun in the job that you do? Like, do you want to do acting or theater or drama, or do you want to work in a hospital and help people directly? I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it opens you up to
Yeah.
a whole different like
Mm.
list of opportunities that you probably didn't know.
And it can act as a support when you're trying to go through what can be, as we've discussed, a very difficult process.
Yeah, and I say similarly to people who are talking about getting a diagnosis, especially those who are like later in life, is just start with community because we will often vibe check. We'll know if you're one of us pretty much just from interacting with us, kind of thing. And you'll know if you're one of us by the way we all interact with each other. So, starting with community can open up a whole world of potentials and make you realize that you can sort of thrive and you just need different atypical advice. A bit of a fun.
Yeah.
In doing that. What about yourself?
It's funny because I wrote it down a different answer to this question, but on the way here, I was thinking that I should have added that on because I've noticed like as the more I build up community, the more autistic friends that I have, the easier it is, and there's more flow. There's like more flow to life. Whereas before, it just kind of felt like I was pushing things up a hill. It was just like constantly pushing against the grain. So yeah, I think that and that's really comes down to having support systems and that understand you and like can work together with you. I think like it's really important. That's definitely a big part of thriving, I think. And it's undersold for a lot of people. So a lot of people are completely isolated. And the first thing they really need to do, is build community, 100%.
Yeah, and you need to find a community that values your autism.
Yeah.
Autism valued.
Absolutely.
I had to do it.
It's in the name.
I had to do it. I had to do it.
You have to
No,
go.
I think it can be hard to recognize when you're like so focused on specifically finding a job
Yeah.
to like look in other areas that aren't necessarily directly job related.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because that's kind of speaks about like the hidden market. You enter opportunities and you connect with people, and a lot of the jobs that are out there aren't even actually online or haven't been created yet. Everyone's got something that they need help with. If I had the more money, I could hire 10 people tomorrow with the amount of things I need help with. It's those people. You both know how much work I do. Yeah,
you need another you.
Yeah. I've because somewhat got a we've got a program coordinator. We've got Zara who's great. But even that's within the AV sort of side of things. But with all my other work, I could. We all need supports, and we all need a team, and any successful career needs that. My next question for the conversation is, what would it look like if schools, families, support services, and employers actually worked together on early career pathways instead of each doing their bit separately?
I think it would be incredibly streamlined. as writing in my notes before, I think my high school did quite a good job of doing that, essentially contacting support services directly. Like I remember in high school we had like practice interviews that were run by a separate organization to the school, and that really helped in the process.
Mm.
Yep. I wrote quite a bit, but that's interesting. I think they've really improved on transition supports in a lot of schools now. Um so yeah, I think I'm not sure if all my critiques are actually entirely warranted for like, because they have made some gains. But I guess like for me, I think that universities and mostly universities, but also TAFEs in particular, universities need to start working on incorporating more life skills, I think, into their programs, their degrees, um, to prepare people for that transition into employment after graduating. And I think that, yeah, things would look very, very different, I think, if they wanted to start doing that. In a way where I think that would really help everybody, but it would also help a lot of autistic people. I've known it's very common to come across people on the spectrum that have multiple degrees and are still struggling to maintain employment, find employment, or, they might finish their course and then they actually don't even really start that job search process for quite some time and they can get really, really stuck. Also, I think parents could definitely be more involved. I think, um, before you start a job, like there are certain ducks that you need to have in a row, like in terms of just general basic life skills that I think parents could be involved in more to make sure people are set up to actually even succeed and be able to manage without burning out. And I think high schools could also, I think they're doing a lot more, like you said. I think high schools have probably upped their game the most. But like in recent times. But they could definitely, I suppose, link in more as well with it would be just be more streamlined, like you said. It would all actually flow together a bit more.
By contacting other organizations. I went to quite an alternative high school, so it might not be true for every high school, but they were what was fantastic about that school, sorry to go on about this, but they were very direct and explicit about the skills you'd probably need to develop for the workplace.
Yeah.
They were very focused on getting kids employed and stuff. I mean, like 16-year-olds and over, because it was generally a group of like kind of at-risk teenagers. So they wanted to make sure they got supports and got into the workforce. Like I remember we even practiced running like a professional interview when I was in high school. I mean, meeting, sorry, not interview, but around that sort of.
Yeah, I think it might be somewhat across the board. I've spoken with careers counselors that work in schools, and I think they do focus a lot more on transition support than they used to, because it was used to being more or less nothing. It was very bare minimum. But I think now that, especially with students they know that have additional barriers, I think they put in a little bit more work with it, which is good. But yeah, I would really like to see a bigger focus on skills around autonomy, time management, and just, those types of skills that you need to just be able to, I guess, maintain a full-time job or even your life, as an adult. So I think that's probably a lot more focus needs to go on that.
Yeah, but and you're right. That schools, well, the system at large is focusing on it more. I think you're correct in saying that the schools are probably making the most headway. And as I interact with schools in many different sort of positions and perspectives, even the public schools and not even those sort of specialists and have the means to be a little bit more adaptive with the way that they do things. There is there's good movement happening. We've got to think about like engagement and the incentive behind it too. So for example, if one of the things I find crazy about universities is we pay to go there. They're the ones who nurture the relationships with the industry. Right? They should be like the closest to the big employers and the industry and everything else. But you have no guaranteed job. So if they are training me to do that job, and then I get that qualification saying I can do that job, but why isn't there a job? You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
I
I
almost feel
think
like you should be.
I think there's a gap between the knowledge they obtain in a university qualification and the job ready skills
Mm,
that they need to actually be able to do that job. And and employers just don't want to take it on. They don't want to have to do all the training and, you know, at the end of the day, like yeah, they need to work better together. And I think universities have been focusing on this as well, but um yeah, I think, and some occupations do lead directly to employment. So like, if you studied paramedical science, you generally speaking are going to become a paramedic, especially because there's a shortage of workers.
yeah.
If there's an industry shortage, you're like, in some areas you are more or less like going to get a job, unless, like, not guaranteed, but it's
Yeah.
good.
And those areas have like a requirement of placement. So in theory, the place where you did placement would hire you.
Mhm.
Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. There needs to be more. I guess they need to take a more of like an apprenticeship based approach to that, don't they? Where more of the learning's done on there, and you go to university for a couple blocks, because then there's that incentive. So I know myself, but my qualifications in baking and patisserie, nothing to do with what I do now. um, but yeah, if I didn't have a job to do that, I wouldn't have gone and done that as a course. Even though I'm somewhat good at cooking and whatever else, I didn't mind it in school, but it wasn't my dream job. It was just what I saw accessible to me. I wasn't doing well in school. I needed to leave. Came from a not the best like economic position, being a single mum or whatever else. So I knew if I left school, I had to get work, and that was work. And um, no one like if it wasn't for that incentive of the money, I wouldn't go and do work experience at a bakery and wake up get there at 2 a.m. Just,
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you need to have strong incentives there, and students need to actually realize what it's for. And
Yeah. I worked in hospitality for 3 years. Actually, when I finished school too, I sold muffins.
Sold
Close
muffins.
enough.
Yeah, but then like
Yeah.
through the bakery, you got some level of kind of management experience, didn't you? Because you were like kind of the bakery manager. Or am I remembering this?
No, you're
Yeah.
you're right. And like, there's a lot of transferable stuff that comes from that, which is might not be seen at face value. So if we look at production management versus project management, it's all about timing. When's the things coming out of the oven versus when do I need to connect with this person? It's the right things, right time, multiple things going on. So I was good at that. That's why I, was a good baker. And yeah, you're right. I then, because of my ability to do that and to sort of see the production from start to finish, and because of that, I was really good at putting out any issues that came about because kind of before I even started my day, I'd done the whole day in my head. Not a really good thing for work-life balance when you're going home thinking about work all the time. But then I went into the bakery management part with one of the large supermarkets, and did high volume stuff, and that was the transferable skill that came from that. And
Yeah.
now so looking back on it, I wouldn't want to change anything in the sense of, because then would I be who I am now? But yeah, I remember originally I wanted to be a carpenter because that's what my dad was. That's all I really did with dad. That was one of the things I did well in school because it's something I did. I was more with my hands. So I cooked with my mum and my sister, and I did woodwork with my dad. Went to go down that route, but mum couldn't drive. I lived in Gembrook, which is a little town. At the time, they didn't even have a bus down to Pakenham. So for me to try and get to Dandenong or Berwick, where the tastes were doing it, you know, almost impossible unless I wanted to do a 3-hour journey, or
Yeah.
try and fund something that we didn't have. So what are some of the things that are missing from this conversation? It's one of the things that we're going to tackle in the Job Seeker Network around, meeting with in our next, in our first iteration coming up soon, around meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
And for me, using Maslow's hierarchy as an example of that, is a lot of these job coaching, a lot of these, the efforts we're trying to make, they don't take into that consideration of, okay, they might be able to thrive in that workplace. But I can say from my position, the more I'm thriving at work, the less I'm thriving at home. I can't. I don't have the capacity. I try and do both. So even if I'm then keeping up with both, you know, then I'm probably not keeping up with sleep. Something has to
Yeah,
give.
there's a risk of and that puts you at risk of burnout
Yeah.
over time. Um, I guess we kind of just touched on a lot of different things. Like it does depend. Like it's not a simple solution in that it depends on where you are in your career and the life stage as to what the advice might be as well. So as a careers practitioner, you wouldn't just give generic advice to every single person. There's not a magical solution. But yeah, like for example, with younger people, you were saying they require more motivation now, whereas, and I think that's partially a generational thing too, because when, you know, like when I graduated, pretty much everyone just got a job because we wanted money, basically. So there was more motivation to do that. And so you just got whatever job you could get. And that helped you build up employment skills so that when you finish whatever qualification you were doing, you would have some level of job readiness through those skills you obtained through hospitality or in a supermarket or wherever you're working. And I'm not saying that's something all autistic people should do, because I don't think that is necessarily, like, I don't think they should necessarily not think that through, but maybe don't, for your first job. So if the advice I would give to someone entering the employment market at 17 is going to be very different to say I'm going to give to someone that's in a mid-career transition that might need to think more about what they really want to do. Whereas if you are 17 and maybe you do just need to get a job that suits you, like I'm assuming being a baker, maybe being in a baker actually did suit you, like in terms of your sleep cycle, and you probably didn't have to communicate too much with people and you just did your own thing. Like, whereas if you were in a customer facing role and you would have to go through 100 people a day, that might have been like, so don't necessarily choose a role that is not completely wrong for you, but maybe don't be as picky for your first job.
Yeah. Yeah, but when I highlight, so the bakery was my first like proper job, but before then, um, a lot of kids wouldn't even know what the term pocket money,
Yes.
but that used to be your first job. So I used
Yep.
to split wood. I used to, I had to dig holes to bury sheep and all sorts of
Yes.
stuff for neighbors and weird stuff, mowing lawns. So yeah, quite often when people are thinking about that, when you go, okay, especially at 17, you go, well, why are you working? It's either the experience or it's the money.
It was normal back then though, because this is 20 years ago. So this is just what, everyone worked for that. Most people were doing chores for their pocket money and like little, I did a paper round.
Yeah.
So, and that got, and you do something like that so you could afford, back then we didn't have streaming. This is probably going to bore our younger listeners. Back then we didn't have streaming services. So you would then use your pocket money to go buy a CD or a DVD or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was your motivation.
Yeah. And I think another thing that young listeners won't really recall is, and maybe this is where it's kind of adds to the anxiety of thinking about doing something like gardening, for example, where we used to just go knock on our neighbor's door, knock on the door, like, hey, is my friend here? Yeah, there's that general interactions that are quite often missing nowadays. But yeah, that made it more comfortable to be like, well, hey, I noticed that Mrs. Harris, you know, uh, she's too old to do her lawns. Maybe I'll go offer to help her do that for $20 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that that's work experience. That's
Yeah.
that. And yeah, there's actually a student who within our teams program recently, within one of the last cohorts, who was doing something like that. And like that shows, it shows in the way that they carry themselves, in the way that in anything, knowing that they're capable of actually getting out there, completing a job. Gardening's a simple one in that sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, it comes down to what do you actually need, and then just thinking about the problem.
And that's not to say that, if you have sensory issues or other things you need to think about, do take that into consideration. But your first job doesn't have to be your forever job. You're probably going to change jobs many times throughout your life. And, the important thing is just to build up your employment skills in the beginning. And then and then do think about what you want to do for like for your career, like actually plan that as well, but recognize that there's going to be stepping stones.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking to the the sensitivities part, um, yeah, there's some of that you can overcome it. The amount of this like sensory stuff that I've overcome, had to overdo. Like one for me still is cotton, like medical cotton freaks me out. Yeah, like
Yeah.
just
Sorry, I
touch it.
shouldn't.
No, like I'm full jet. Like but at the same time, that doesn't mean I'm scared of using cotton buds
Yeah.
or that sort of thing. Or if I was in a medical
Yeah.
position, I'd still pick up.
Or even think like, would my employer be okay if I just wore earplugs? Like, you can get some earplugs that aren't really that noticeable, and maybe you'll still hear people fine.
Yeah,
So
like
you can try to make compromises.
those loop things that
Yeah,
aren't
they're
actually
really
playing.
good.
Yeah, so there's there are compromises you can make, and I guess why I was highlighting that is I want to encourage people to remember to put themselves in positions where they're going to grow resilience. When you do have hypersensitivities, you might not think like you can overcome them, but I'm telling you as someone who has it, I'm sure you both have had your own things. You can push through a lot of them, but you just have to do it in sort of micro steps, sort of thing. So, for example, gardening. Some people might be like, I don't want to garden. I hate flies. I don't know. A lot of our community seem to hate flies, especially the young people I work with.
Oh, random.
Yeah, I don't know. They would just seem to. They really hate. They seem to always hate flies. But one of the young men I work with, kind of speaking to my own necessity factor and incentive factor, is he, living now being an adult, living with his mum. They were living rurally. Jobs needed to get done. She needed help. It paid for his part of the bond or whatever. So now there's necessity and means, and he still hates flies, but he'll go out there. He won't, make be shut down by the fact of having to go out and do the work. So, just you know yourself.
And there's some things that you might be able to overcome, and some things like that might, like, I'm not saying push through everything. Like, there's so many different types of jobs. Like, it's probably not necessary to push yourself through something that is too much. Just choose choose something different.
Yeah.
Like, do outside. If being inside is too much, be outside. Do something out. Do some outside work. Or if you. Yeah, sorry, Jack
Absolutely.
hasn't said
So
anything.
I was going to say, like, there are a lot of ways to start. I think you guys said you kind of started off with like gardening and like doing the drop off of stuff. My sister's first job was tutoring mathematics. She was quite good at it, so that's very much a different environment than maybe you guys have experienced. Like you were saying, there's so many ways to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that start and the things you learn can come from sort of anywhere. So you mentioned like the baking thing. I was actually, as well as being the bakery apprentice, I had to be the customer service person, the barista, serve it everyone, which naturally was a lot more of a struggle to me when I was younger. But
my first kind of role was like a volunteering role. I used to volunteer for like a Red Cross op shop where I gained a lot of experience in like customer service, and it was pretty fun.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest.
And sometimes those core foundational skills you learn in positions like that are just as valuable as what you learn elsewhere. So I have asked you both to come in here with some a question of yourself for me and for the listeners to reflect on, and if we get time, a comment and a statement that you want us to sort of think about. So I'll give you a moment to share those if you'd like.
What can young job seekers do to stay motivated when searching for a job? This is primarily aimed at you.
Make sure you're passionate about it. I mean, that sounds very stereotypical, but I know I'm working. So when I came to AV, I came already, with my own social enterprise, my own, actions that I want to change, and so I already had that mission I was working towards. And if you know what your mission is and you know sort of why you're doing it, that will help you get through a lot of different things, or help you get through that uncomfortability. So being a high school dropout, I didn't nail English or math or any of those things, but then becoming an entrepreneur and now have to talk to people, write things, do things. I had to relearn all that stuff. But with that incentive and that passion and that why behind the work that I'm doing, that allowed me to self-fuel, self-learn, and sort of, I guess, stay motivated and consistent. But if I was in a role where I wasn't aligned to it in any bit, which I have done in the past, although I find ways to, like in those roles, I look for ways to get more invested in it. Otherwise, I just feel that you start looking for something else, that motivation wears out. But yeah, find your north, I suppose.
What do you wish you had known about getting a job when you finished high school, and that someone would have told you? Maybe just answer that part.
It's all on you.
Yep.
That might sound kind of rough, rugged, but when we talk about my baking apprenticeship, there's this key moment I remember. There was a teacher. I was, coming from school into now a TAFE environment where, I've got adults and stuff in the room with me. The TAFE teacher said to me, he's like, I get paid whether you're here or not. I get paid whether you pass or not. So you want to leave. You want to play up. You want to do whatever. I don't care. It's all on you. I get paid regardless. You want to make my job easier by not being here? Okay, but I'm here to teach. If you want to be taught, then, so that right there, I was like, okay, it's all on me. Realizing there's no, school is kind of like, there's a bit of a safety net, I mean? They can't just kick you out on the street. You can't really just kind of say, go home, in some sense.
Yeah.
And that was a real eye opener for me in that moment, being a real early sort of tough conversation based thing. Do you feel that?
No, I think that that's a really important lesson to learn, and it was good that you learned it younger, because often sometimes it just doesn't sink in until later. And I was reflecting on that before with school and university and everything. Like when you go out into the real world, like there's no room for mistakes. So especially, you do a university assignment, it's just like, oh yeah, that's good enough. Here is a C. You go out into the real world and you screw something up, you misunderstand the if you're running a business, you don't understand the legislation or the rules, or there's something you've missed, and then that starts a cascade of events that you would rather not deal with. And just stuff like having to think about so many different things. Even in an organization, you're going to have a lot more responsibility put on you straight away. And there won't necessarily be a lot of room for any mistakes in, yeah.
Yeah. Accountability is a big one. I guess that sort of speaks to where I was coming from, and so mirrors your comment, is realizing that you are going to be outside of school, you are going to be directly accountable. You're not just now accountable for
even if it's
education.
to yourself.
yeah. But sometimes using a similar example to yours, you miss a digit, or you calculate something wrong when you're an accountant.
Yeah.
Or you mess something up on policy, or
yeah,
there's different consequences that are going to come with that.
Yep. And it depends what field you go into, I guess, as well. But some, can have bigger consequences, like healthcare and nursing and that type of thing. Like there's a lot more. Yeah. So I feel like I think a lot more practical assessments could be included in school to sort of prepare people for that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just like a shock.
Yeah. And to sort of close up my statement of it being all on you, I remember I used to complain about, they didn't respond to me, I didn't get the job, didn't do this. I could have been sitting there thinking my resume is great and everything else is great, but it doesn't matter how smart you are, there's going to be someone smarter. It doesn't matter how fast you are, there's going to be someone faster. It doesn't matter how strong you are, there's going to be someone stronger. My dad taught me that very early. I think that sort of always stuck with me. So you got to recognize that there's competition out there. You're competing. That can either drive you, or that can kind of really hold you back, I suppose, sometimes.
I basically just was going to say thanks for inviting me to the podcast, and it's been great to sort of collate my thoughts around all of this, especially before we start the Job Seeker Network tomorrow. And yeah,
For
I
those
hope-
who are listening, tomorrow won't be your tomorrow. So it would
Yes.
it would have
Not-
already these are pre-recorded.
Not yours
Shocker.
tomorrow.
Yeah. So this the Job Seeker Network will be running. And yeah, you might have to backtrack on the first module. However, it's a roadmap, so it doesn't matter if you come in a couple of pit stops down the road. We can try and ensure that you can use that asset accordingly. But yeah, very excited for that.
Comment is teach work-related skills directly and explicitly, which I think we've echoed in early education.
The final statement, that was what I was going to make do you have any more, or is that?
No, I've just got that.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it's not about instantly being adaptable. It's about learning to own your own story, claim your strengths, and be curious enough to see other possibilities. So, it's about acknowledging where you're at now and being open to change, first of all.
Yeah, be open to change because everything's changing, not just for autistic people, but for the whole world of work, whether it's AI and what happened during COVID and wherever the world's at now. Be willing to accept that change, be adaptable to that change, and always realize that your autism is valued. That closes up our conversation for today. So thank you all for coming, and until next time. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jack.
Nice.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. These topic spotlights only open the conversation, while our Career Network group and aligned topic touchstone meetings aim to reinforce and reflect on the themes. As our community's voice, I'm greatly aware that my voice, while relatable, must remain fueled by those I serve. That's what the World of Work ecosystem aims to do. Simply click the links to find out more. Thanks for listening.